my goal, as they say in complex adaptive systems, is to actually search for that bifurcation point that will actually switch our perspective away from treating disease and into optimizing health. What was very exciting was that Boomer took charge here in developing the metabolomics courses, the cohorts, etc. It's a lot of work and a lot of effort. The thing is, it's just like, you have a little lever on a lock. And, with the momentum that we're building, the community building is especially exciting because it pulls the lever a little bit closer and closer to open until that bifurcation point actually happens, right?
Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Smarter Not Harder podcast. Today we're going to do a 2024 recap. We've got a few of our trusted amigos here. Why don't we just have everybody introduce themselves real quick, starting with the other lady with the microphone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jodi Duval, and you've heard my Aussie accent before on this podcast. And I'm here with three incredible gentlemen.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ted Achacoso, the non-important one who founded Smarter Not Harder Inc., Prescriptions, and Health Optimization Medicine and Practice.
Should I take both microphones at the same time? All right, cool. Boomer Anderson, also non-important one, CEO of Smarter Not Harder and CEO of Health Optimization Medicine and Practice.
Yes, and I am Dr. Scott Sherr. I am one of your podcast hosts, as you all know, probably, but I'm very blessed and grateful to be sitting next to these amazing humans here with the HOMeHOPe faculty and to bring you a 2024 recap.
Because this year, he became a bona fide influencer.
It's actually on his tax return.
Yes.
He just doesn't know it yet.
Go
All right,
study.
so 2024 R&D only, you have to capitalize it over 4 years. So just FYI. So today, 2024 recap, we want to talk a little bit about health trends and things that happened in 2024. The first of which that we're going to talk about is, let's talk about MDMA and the year that wasn't for MDMA. As we know, the FDA sort of struck down MDMA from being, I guess, able to be used in clinics for PTSD. Let's get reactions on that one, because if you actually go back to last year's recap, we talked about 2024 being the year of psychedelics and psychedelic medicine. What are your general thoughts about MDMA, psychedelics, and the future of these medicines?
Well, I can't really make too many comments on this.
Well, you come from a country that actually
we actually got somewhere this year.
Yeah,
we
that's
did.
true.
True. So psilocybin got somewhere this year, but became way too expensive. But we are moving, and there are many psychiatrists being trained, and we have some good clinics coming on board. So they are starting, and I've had clients being involved in trials, and that's brilliant. But very sad for MDMA.
Are there good sources in Australia?
There is very good sources. Yeah, no, we are doing really well with that. Okay. And there has been 10 of my clients so far who have been involved in some sort of trial. So it's moving pretty fast. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'll go to looking at it from the business side of things or from the optics of things. I think Lycos, made an optical misjudgment in privatizing, rather than remaining as a nonprofit in MAPS, before it was announced. Had they done that after, they probably would have gotten the permission. But I don't know. Because the comments of the FDA, as I looked at them, it's they look pretty flimsy to me. It's this and that. But I think it's the management of the optics of the whole thing, right? They should have privatized after approval rather than before approval.
Look, setback, but as I understand it, Lycos or MAPS is continuing to push forward. Now there's been a little bit of reorganization within the MAPS or Lycos organization, and it's expected now to take, another 3 to 5 years in order to go through the process again. But there are a team of people and dedicated really dedicated mental health therapists that are trying to and are committed to moving this forward. Now, I'm going to throw this question out here. Haven't really rehearsed it with you guys yet. Is there another substance that will lead the way in the United States? Now, my man to the right here lives in Denver, where it's decriminalized nature, right?
Yep.
And so are there other substances, i.e. psilocybin, that could make their way into culture a lot faster? Or places like Switzerland that are also entertaining the idea of LSD for things like general anxiety disorder? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think there are obviously a lot of municipalities around the world that are doing their own thing. As always, the government is going to be the last to really sign on to these kinds of things. Our FDA, I mean, now that we have a new administration, maybe something will change. It usually doesn't. And even though they've talked about hypothetically, making cannabis not a Schedule 1 anymore, but we'll see. So I think if anything, I think cannabis may be the first, just because that one has been kind of on the cusp for a while. And we have Oregon, we have Colorado, especially Denver, and surround. We have psilocybin. I know there's many trials that are going on with LSD derivatives, and also psilocybin derivatives as well. So I think this is all going to happen local, state-wide, and then in some other countries. And then eventually it's going to, things will change over on the larger governmental structure as well. But it's going to be a while still. So I don't think it's going to happen in 2025.
There's a bigger problem here that actually needs to get addressed, right? We've run out of options in producing drugs that address mental health issues. And that's why we returned to psychedelics, because we really just swept them under a rug. And now we have to examine them over again. And, all of these things that are happening right now, these are just really fallback issues to the main issues, like how are we going to address, if we want to continue to address mental health issues with drugs, we should make all of these drugs available really for research, right? For a while there, it was very difficult to do research on cannabis. And now people, we can't approve that because we don't have data. Well, we don't have data because we actually couldn't get cannabis before to study. I mean, it's kind of a circle of, not getting something and then you being accused of not having enough data, and how can things get approved? So it's actually part of thinking through with common sense exactly what you're asking for, right? The government is asking for more data. Well, give us a lot more leeway in accessing the drugs that are needed for testing, right? And those are the things the thing that bothers me the most is that we are turning to this because we have run out of options, right? And that is a very sad state of affairs.
Implementation here, I think, is key, right? In many of these places, whether it be Denver, Oregon, a few other cities, the implementation and the guidelines around implementation of decriminalized or whatever it is have been pretty lackluster. Even in cannabis, most cities have pretty weak implementation rules. And so those of course, will take time. Speaking of time, I think it's time to move on to the next topic. How about that for a segue?
You've done better.
Yeah, I've done better. Okay, that seems like it's been overused. All right, let's talk about GLP-1s and the world of obesity.
Oh, goodness.
All right, who wants to kick this one off?
Ted has the tech talk to this.
Oh, actually, no. Scott here, the Dr. Scott, is the one who is most versed with obesity.
I'm not sure what that means exactly, but okay. But
talking to the right people.
I mean, it's been an interesting world, I have to say, over the last year, and definitely over the last year, but kind of, I think, starting in 2023, but definitely in 2024, like the Wegovy's of the world and the Mounjaros and some of these newer ones that are coming out, tirzepatide, I believe I saw a study that obesity went down for the first time ever. Now, I don't know if they all died. Ted, you asked me this question before, and that's why, but that's of course another issue. But it is having an effect on overall culture, and actually even people are snacking less, I've been reading. And so the snacking companies are trying to make more high dense shakes, of course, and calorically dense shakes to try to get around the GLP-1 lack of appetite that people get, so that just like when we had gastric bypass and banding, people could eat through their bypasses and eat through their bands by just getting a ton more calories in by liquid. The same thing's going to happen here. Just what'll always happen is these companies are going to try to adapt to continue to give us more calories. But in essence, I do think there is a positive effect in actually not a small amount of people. I mean, people that have very few options with super morbid obesity, with BMIs over 40 or 50. I know I've seen people with BMIs that high. Like at that point, like what are you going to do, right? So, but if it's one of those things where you're using it for the last 5 or 10 pounds, I think that's likely misguided in a lot of ways, and that could be dangerous. And we have a couple people that we know that have had issues as a result, and I've had patients that have had issues with dehydration, with fainting, with brain fog and other kinds of issues. If you're trying to use it for like the last 5 or 10 pounds and be the Hollywood superstar that you want to be, Boomer.
Thank you so much for calling me out there.
Well, the thing that you like to think about in health optimization medicine and practice in particular is that we tend to think in epochs, right? In the paleo epoch, for example, it was a paleo diet that they had. And, I look at the gliptins as, it's like initially metformin was presented as an anti-aging drug. And the reason for that is that we have basically societies now who have high refined carbohydrate intake, right? And so metformin wouldn't work during the paleo epoch, but it work now. Now, the gliptins are working now, It's like, but people should remember that it does not only do fat loss, it does also muscle loss, right? And that is one of the main problems with the use of the gliptins. So, and I like to say to the students in HOMeHOPE exactly that we're not weight loss doctors, we're fat loss doctors. And these are the things that we guard against when a patient is actually placed on gliptins. And these gliptins are only working right now and producing these effects because there are so many obese people, right? And what if you don't have any more? And so if you take a look at it from epochal time, you see that they have a use right now, but probably when, I don't know when, we start putting refined sugar as a Schedule I substance, or whether or not we could actually get to that place.
Just would add, and something that Scott said earlier resonated when he talked about how food companies would try to do something with the GLP-1s. I think it's Nestle that is actually going to be coming out soon with GLP-1 agonist snacks, and so the food itself will encourage the activation of GLP-1, which would be interesting because in many ways Nestle is shooting itself in the foot. They do have a whole separate section of their company, Atrium Innovations, that has pure encapsulations, Douglas Labs, as well as Living Matrix. So they do appear to be playing the game. There are a lot of companies, one out of New Zealand that I know of, one here in the United States, that are using capsules now instead of injectables, because we know that I think will be more trending next year. But it's something that you're starting to see already, particularly in this sort of frontier health space that we're in.
Easier delivery. Yeah. Clinic for me, I see it from a clinical perspective because I see a lot of patients, clients on this. And for me, the main concerns are we're not teaching clients better lifestyles. And the success rate for the clients that I see on Mounjaro, on any of them that they've come through, that they just don't maintain results. And it is scary because it's worse off for them, and it's worse for the way that they feel, the way that they perceive themselves. There's mental components to that and mental health components to that. And it's really, something I haven't seen to be of great success.
But it's great for clothing companies. Oh, I can throw out my wardrobe now.
Yeah,
but then they have to buy a new one.
Yeah.
They have to buy a new one after.
I have a friend that works for, is it Novartis, I think, one of the companies, and they have these parties, just ridiculous parties, just celebrating that these people are on this drug for their life, right? This is the lifetime drug, and that's what every pharmaceutical company wants. It's like it's the pinnacle of a drug if you can have somebody take it for the rest of their life, and so that's a big challenge, right? Coming off of GLP-1s is not easy, but as
sick. They don't feel good on it.
Yeah, I mean, so
the majority of them don't.
Yeah, what I've been hearing now in the longevity community is more about these microdosing of the GLP-1s instead of taking the full dose that makes you feel like you don't want to eat. Take just below that dose, but still get some of the benefits. They're doing some studies on cardiovascular disease and dementia as well. There might be some benefits there. So it's a challenge. I think that as Dr. Ted said aptly, we are on this epoch where I would love to have sugar as a class or class 1 substance or whatever, right? So, but it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, And correct information, like Nick Fuller, I did a couple of podcasts with him this year on Smarter Not Harder, and he put it just perfectly in that we need to really define what people need to be looking at in terms of their habit tree, and even with families as well, because we did a great one with families, and it all starts with the young ones and just building up really good habit tree around how we should be eating, what we should be doing, and what's whole food, and we actually teach what whole food is and what food actually is instead of pretending that we know where food comes from. But mental health is a big one for me, I find, with these things. Yeah.
Well, okay, that's a good segue into trend number 3 that we want to discuss from this year. And I think this is something that actually started more in 2019, 2020, when we started talking more about mental health as a result of staying home from COVID, or that word that you can't say on public media channels. And this has resulted in, all know owners of numerous businesses that had online therapy clinics that boomed as a result. In fact, Dr. Kuipers and I have sat down with the owner of one in the Netherlands. But this trend and focus on mental health, or at least people talking about it, thoughts, feelings, how's it grab you? We're all going to you first, or you want to hear?
I can always talk. They know this. So it's a very interesting trend. I mean, definitely since the beginning of the pandemic, there was a huge amount of anxiety, obviously, in 2020. And we saw prescription for Ativan, Xanax, the benzos of the world go up dramatically. Sleep pills go up dramatically. And I think more people are kind of coming around to the fact that these drugs are not the right answer overall. There are a lot more online companies now than there were even back then that are doing online therapy, that you can see a therapist in a short period of time and pay like a monthly fee. I do get a little bit concerned about mail order SSRIs and all that. They're using them for erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation. Actually, you can get an SSRI prescription for premature ejaculation right now. So that's a little bit iffy, but like that's how the market goes, right? But I think it's an interesting world because I mean, so many people have, like we call it little T and big T trauma, right? And so it does have a huge effect on our life, and so many kids are abused as children too, and like that's becoming more well known, I think. But I think the trend that I saw mostly is that there's more awareness in 2024, and that I think the other piece of it is that there's a really big movement now to understand the metabolic side of what's going on from a mental health perspective. There is a pretty cool organization called Metabolic Mind. I interviewed one of I think the CEO, I believe that's what he is, or the president. His name is Dr. Brett Sherr, so close to my last name, but just with one R. And we had a great conversation about using the ketogenic diet specifically for bipolar disorder. And I was the founder of Roblox, I think, one of their sons actually with bipolar on the streets using the ketogenic diet and seeing some fantastic benefits. So I know Dr. Ted probably has more to talk about this, but what is mental health, but brain health optimization, et cetera. So you can take it away.
Actually, no, it's not that. For 2024, it was actually very interesting because during the rise of COVID and people staying at home, etc., there was actually a rise in the use of ketamine turkeys, right? That would be mailed to you, and then you take the turkeys, and then your a psychiatrist or your therapist would do a post-ketamine therapy. And you do this all at home, and everything was done by telehealth or telemedicine. And, that was essentially how you dealt with depression and brain resets and so on and so forth. But interestingly, in 2024, there was just this fall of so many ketamine clinics, right? And suddenly there's like, a whole bunch of them are beginning to disappear or have disappeared altogether, which is a curious phenomenon. I mean, where did their clients go? When they were actually, there were so many clinics that were actually started in the United States, which are now all closing down. And that's the thing that I remember from the beginning of this year to now. It's just the rapid decline of ketamine clinics.
I just want to add something you guys didn't bring up, and I was a little bit surprised about, is the forgotten neurotransmitter and some things and efforts that we've made this year around GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid. It's something that I know you've talked about with Carl Friston on the podcast, right? And how there's this need to refocus on GABA. Does anybody want to comment here on just some of the efforts both we've done with transcriptions, but also kind of a resurgence and focus on mental health and what that means for the GABA system?
Yeah, one of the more inspiring parts of my interview with Carl Friston the great guy, is that he said, Ted, you're on the right track. No one's paying attention to GABA, but GABA is probably the central molecule you should pay attention to when studying schizophrenia. I thought that was a very powerful statement because we have created a hyper-stimulative world, right? That has induced a lot of ADHD, but we have not actually honed in on the brakes. We're okay with exciting ourselves, and not getting any sleep and so on and so forth. But we are so poor at actually quieting our minds down with a natural break of the mind. And it has become popular again. But there's an old study where the people, the students, were actually said, just sit for 20 minutes in a room, do nothing. You're not allowed to check your phones. You're not allowed to sleep. Just be there and be with your thoughts. And if the only thing that you can do is to electrocute yourself, right? If you feel bored, etc., and you have to do something, and 60% of the people actually electrocuted themselves, and that's how bad we are. So aside from Boomer being the original guy for whom I actually created Trocom for the anxiety, I noticed that no one has really paid attention to the braking system of the brain. We're just careening on and off one place or the other, and that's epitomized by the epidemic of attention deficit disorder, right?
Yeah,
Hold on.
Okay,
just for the record here on Trocom, our doorwoman at our condo calls me walking peace. So I just no. Well, I mean, now she's only known me since May, so I think maybe it works.
Well, one thing I want to mention too on the GABA side is that the first drug for postpartum depression was actually approved in 2024, and this one is a GABA-A agonist. And the reason why it was approved is because it works immediately. So a lot of these other drugs, your SSRIs, your SNRIs, they take 4 or 6 weeks or longer. And we know from lots of meta-analysis over the last, actually since maybe this was 2024 as well, that we know that depression is not a serotonin deficiency. For many years, we thought that the serotonin levels were low in patients with depression. This is why things like Prozac and Paxil worked. But we now know that that's not really the case, right? These drugs can work and they can be very helpful. They also have potentially dangerous black box side effects if you're not careful, things like suicidality, et cetera. But the great thing about GABA is that if you're GABA deficient, you have a higher risk of depression, you have a high risk of anxiety, you have a high risk of insomnia, tremors, maybe things like OCD and schizophrenia as well. And so what we really did, because Dr. Ted did the research and saw, was we created a whole new way of thinking about optimizing the GABA system from a way to make sure that you could replete the GABA in the system at the same time as enhancing the way that the receptor would work, and as a result of that, improve the brakes of the brain. So
I really don't understand why no one picked up, or I don't know whether or not they picked up and thought it was irrelevant or a minor detail. But when it is shown that in depression, the brain doesn't really quiet down. In fact, when you're depressed, the area in the brain called the habenula, right, the habenular nucleus, it fires at a very, very high rate. And this is actually the nucleus where you could see firing at a high rate in anger, right? And these are from depressed people. So I picked on that and said, how do you quiet down this firing in depressed people? And I said, well, that could not be settled by an SSRI. That should be done by the natural inhibitor of these signals to the brain, which is GABA.
I just want to add, just the practitioner side of point of view, is that we've forgotten that metabolomics is nutrient balancing is a huge component of mental health. So I feel that for 2024 there's a massive rise in opportunity for people to be learning more about optimizing their health, and we've seen that massively this year. And so in my clinical practice, when I see and I do nutrient balancing through HOMeHOPe, there is incredible change in people's perception of themselves, plus their coping abilities, and reduction of overwhelm in their life. And so they're able to actually switch off and not feel like they're overwhelmed in their life. Therefore, they can actually take breaks. They're not searching for the next thing to heal, support, to distract. So it really works. Neurotransmitter balancing and nutrients.
Actually, it was just a couple of years ago when they correlated the gut microbiota with depression, anxiety, and so on, right? So people this year, it's no longer the top 10 news, but you could see a lot of news about how it actually relates. Having a healthy gut microbiota actually relates to a great mental health. So you'll see more of those news coming up. I think through 2025. But for now, it's like it's already common fare to see the association of your gut microbiota with your mental health.
All right, AI. Now, before we just pass the mic over his head, we're not going to give you both.
Loud and clear.
So 2024, if you go back, or 2023, the episode wrap was basically you rapping about AI for almost an hour. Now, we're going to probably cut you off shorter this time.
It was an hour and a half.
Yeah, and so this time,
Rip the mic off you.
I'll kind of start with a question. Are you disappointed with what's happened in AI this year?
In terms of the technological development, no, I'm not disappointed because I've been working with AI since 1988, back when it was called connectionist systems. The biggest leap that we made is actually, Jensen Huang's company that created more and more powerful processors for this, right? The algorithms, the way, backpropagation, all of those techniques have already been outlined in the 80s, so there's nothing new there as a little addition back and forth, but it's the capacity of the processors to actually carry on this, complex neural networks with many. The biggest change is that it can handle many layers of networks, right? So when you look at that and you look at it like, that's why you see this year, it's like there's a rapid building of essentially warehouses where you could actually rent time to compute for the processing units of for AI, right? And now we're realizing that it's actually very expensive. They have to be water cooled. They have to be, and they require a lot of processing power. So not disappointed at what has happened this year, because what has happened this year is actually, in fact, only this last quarter, they have realized that getting things bigger and bigger, they could solve more and more complex problems. But the what's it called, edge computing, right? To your peripheral devices, your phone can only handle so much in terms of what it can process. So they're going to smaller and smaller large language models. Right? So they're now called small language models. And then
Clever name.
And then the current technique is actually, if the small language model cannot answer, then they're kicked to the large language model. But Apple actually was using that, and it voices security that each time you go up to another company, actually you have a tendency to breach security. So just this week, right? OpenAI, for example, has opened a refinement fine-tuning, right? So you can just basically refine the large language model according to your knowledge domain. And that is, I think, what's going to be the trend, is you're able to refine your fine-tuned model and work on it according to domain. For example, in creating the HOMeHOPe AI program that we're releasing next year, that reads, tests, laboratory tests, metabolomic tests automatically for you, it requires a lot of prompting in order to get what we need to get done, right? But if you just train the system refined in your own knowledge domain, then you could get faster answers from the system. In terms of AGI, which is the biggest issue, have we achieved it? It's just a few days ago, someone from OpenAI claimed, we've already achieved AGI with the O1 and so on and so forth. But 2025 maybe. Elon Musk says 26. Some say 2030. But if something is already performing a lot better than the average human reasoning, well, probably it's already AGI, right?
But OpenAI has a scale of 1 to 5, right? In terms of where we are. And
yeah,
I think
that's
we're at 3.
Yeah, at 3 right now, because next year is the year of agentic systems, right? Those are in 2025, and we could see all the different competing frameworks for agents right now. Right.
Yeah, we're going to talk about agentic systems, I think, in the
Yeah.
2025 outlook. But okay, AI. What about applications that you've seen this year? Are you disappointed with those at all?
You know, essentially you can divide applications into what people need in large companies, right? And then a lot of the, what people deem exciting are the news pieces of news that they could use themselves. Like, for example, video generation, like the new Sora that was just released a couple of days ago, for which I cannot get any access to.
I don't think anybody can.
All of this, anything that's visual is actually interesting. The multimodal LLMs, like multimodal large language models that can take for input audio, video, and other modalities, and then it could basically answer back. In fact, the AI program that I created for HOMeHOPe actually uses different forms of interface, either text, audio, or interactive avatar. But these are just going to be commonplace next year, right? In terms of that. So, the trends in there, you could see, as soon as you get something really, really big and really, really expensive, you try to see, and very expensive, you try to see how much of it you really need for the domain of knowledge that you actually need to do, right? I don't need, for example, cardiology references in a place where I'm looking at a metabolome and looking at long-range correlations in a metabolome, right? So these are the kinds of issues that people think are solved, but they're not, But what excites them more is the tools that, it allows them to put different backgrounds in their pictures, and that's the consumer part of AI, right? It allows them to make Mona Lisa rap, for example.
This goes into the whole thing that Elon said, and I don't agree with a lot of what Elon said. He said, give humans AI, and what are they going to do within the first couple of days? They're just going to entertain themselves. Right?
Yeah. Well, I already said this before. We're a bored society, right? And all we're doing is actually just looking at how to entertain ourselves. But there's also, as a word of caution, there's also a rise of fraud, right? I'm admitting this. I know how to do prompt injections because they actually showed how to do prompt injections, and we use it as a technique, right, in order to make our software run better. But the key is there would be voice clones, and there would be videos of you that look like you, act like you, etc., but are not you. And those are the concerns of the public, right? For us, the bigger concerns would be, where would this technology go, or what's missing in it? And in my older interview with
the guy who looks at it from a computation basis.
Yeah.
What's his name? He's Switzerland.
Essentially, what we basically
Joshua Bach.
Joshua Bach, yeah. One of the things that we discussed there is that when we learn, right, we can give a kid, for example, so many examples, and it could do it by inductive reasoning, right? And says, okay, this is a cat, and then present a tail of a cat, and then say, oh, that's a cat, right? So essentially, the current LLMs are really very good at that, right? They're very good at pattern matching, but there are also what's called computational primitives or conceptual primitives, which is deductive reasoning, right? There are general rules for which we really don't know what the rules are, right, in order to make a decision. And that's why even just this last quarter, there was a discussion on a mode of a hybrid type of LLM that actually marries expert systems, right, if-then systems, with actual pattern matching to produce better results.
All right, I think AI is a topic that we can probably spend a couple of hours on. So we're going to start with you, Jodi. So SNH Podcast, we passed 100 episodes this year. Golfer clap, or sort of one of these. Dr. Cindy Howard was our 100. She's a character. I met her in Branson, Missouri, of all places. It's been a while. Good old Branson. Our Travelers video never actually took off. Let's talk about the SNH podcast. So we're now sitting, I remember actually at A4M 2 years ago recording the intro to this podcast. And we probably should re-record it at this point. But it's something that has become somewhat of a passion project. And, Jodi, Scott have really taken the reins on hosting this year. Favorite episodes of the year?
For me, well, it kicked off with Ethan Russo. So, I have to take the reins on that because I'm kind of knowing the cannabis side of things when speaking on it more often. So, love that. My most surprising was the astrophysicist. That was dark matter. Yeah, so that was fascinating. Also, I had a cannabis one with Maddie Moore. That was cool to see on the ground running what's going on in Oz.
When we say one favorite, do you want to go through all of your
No, I just got... Yeah, that's it. I'll take that.
It's such a fun experience to be able to interview some amazing people. A lot of them have been my friends for many years. Some of them I'm meeting or don't know very well at all when I first interview them. And I've had some amazing conversations. I think the two that stand out to me right now as I'm thinking about it was I did one with Dr. Elizabeth Yurth, who is the medical director of a place called Boulder Longevity Clinic, which is just in Boulder near my town. And she's just a phenomenal clinician. And we talked about repurposed drugs. We talked a lot about COVID and heart disease and cancer as well. And even in the longevity community, there was such great feedback for that particular episode, which I really enjoyed. And she's one of the smartest people that I know. She's been doing longevity medicine more than, longer than many of us have been alive at this point. My other one that I really had a fun time with, actually, and I didn't know it was going to be as fun as it was Dr. Isabella Wentz. We had a great conversation about thyroid issues and Hashimoto's, and she just went through all these little tangents and just loved biochemistry so much, and I really enjoyed having that conversation. But I've had so many, and I know I'm forgetting some, but it's been a pleasure, and I feel like it's been such a gift to be able to be on the other side of the microphone, being able to shut up for a little while and just let people talk. And that's not always an easy thing for me to do, as these guys know, but it's been a really great experience overall. And I look forward to continuing to have amazing guests in 2025.
Scott, have you recorded a podcast with your bangs down?
Not yet. No.
Oh, when you record that podcast, that will become my favorite.
That's 2025.
Yeah. Okay.
That's 2025 trends.
I would just add, you guys mentioned some great guests. Dr. Yurth for me was a good one. I've also seen a couple of her presentations, stolen a few of her ideas, and I find it to be a very useful way to look at reusing or repurposing prescription drugs. The other one that I was going to add here, or actually it's a couple, you had a couple of interviews with interventional cardiologists. And I find, or not interventional, integrative cardiologists. And I just because somewhat of my background is overlapped with the cardiology world, I found those episodes entertaining in the sense that it was a different way to look at what is a very common problem in the United States.
What I think is just so great about what we do on this podcast is that we're mostly interviewing clinicians, right? We're mostly interviewing people that are seeing patients in clinical practice. And I think that's really special, right? Because there's so many people out there, influencers and all, right, that are out there that tell people what to do online, on social media, like, this is my protocol for this, right? And then everybody starts following it. And then Boomer and I, Dr. Ted and Jodi, we have to pick up the pieces when these people do not do well on these kind of protocols, right? Because they're not looking at foundational things. And it's really great to have
clinicians.
Yeah, or they're not clinicians at all, right? And they don't see patients. They don't know the heterogeneity of working with people. So I really enjoy working and speaking specifically with clinicians that are just, they're in the trenches, right? They're seeing people on a day-to-day basis, and they can see what works and doesn't work, and they're not just theorizing or telling you just what their specific advice is. So I look forward to continuing to do that.
And you've had some pretty fun ones too, Scott.
Oh yeah. Danny Williams.
I know you've had the most laughs, I think, of all of us. But and I've been made to cry by Daniel Spiegel, I think it was. David Spiegel. He made me cry. So crying, laughing, we've had the whole shebang.
And kudos to both of you, because you've really taken the reins on the podcast this year. And the SNH podcast is in many ways We still do episodes with sort of subject matter experts, and certainly we do that mainly with clinicians now. It is very clinically focused, and I think that is useful not only to clinicians, but also people who are exploring either their own health issues, obstacles, or endeavors. All right, this is going to be the final question of this episode in 2024. Health optimization, medicine, and practice. We've had quite a year, and just a few facts that I have to memorize before tomorrow, so hopefully I get them right. We now have clinicians in over 13 countries. That's pretty cool. Those, we have several in Asia. We actually have one in South Africa. We have several in the United States, and of course Europe
And Australia.
and Australia. Well, I meant to say Asia and Pacific. There you go.
Yeah.
That's probably Sorry. Yeah. Don't even get me going.
You definitely can't forget.
Oh, so that makes my count is 2 then, because I'm an Asian in the Pacific.
And there you go. It's all right.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring this back. So we graduated 40 clinicians from the clinical metabolomics cohort this year. Now, just for everybody's knowledge, we cap the clinical metabolomics cohort at 15 people. We run it 3 times a year. So if you kind of look 40 over 45 potential clinical metabolomics participants, that's really good. And I think what we've talked about before is we care most about quality of clinician. If you go to a health optimization practitioner or medicine doctor anywhere in the world, you should be able to get a quality experience. And that really is encapsulated in the cohort, because that's a lot of manual time by everybody here to go on these calls once a week to teach their clinical pearls about the various aspects of health optimization. So again, kudos to all of you.
And the preceptorship. Like, a lot of time goes into, for all of us, to review cases, to correct, to check, and that's 3 cases. It's a big feat.
Yeah, and I'll spend a moment on that, Jodi, because it raises a good point for anybody listening here who's sort of on the fence about clinicians. And we're not saying it needs to be any one of us here, but if you're looking at a health optimization practitioner and what they have to go through in order to become a health optimization practitioner, and I'll include doctors in that, of course, it starts with a class that is 12 weeks long. It includes a once-a-week meeting. It includes a final exam that many talented physicians and non-physicians have failed. You have to pass. They usually pass eventually, right? And then you go through a preceptorship, which I like to call it the Health Optimization Medicine and Practice Internship, where you work with a clinician one-on-one to really hone your craft of presenting the cases, right? So each of these clinicians have already gone through 3 cases at a minimum by the time they're seeing people out in the real world, air quotes. So there's a lot of rigor that goes into each clinician. So if you're thinking about, who do I hire to help me fix myself or optimize myself, that health optimization practitioner, and pretty soon on the website we'll have a list of those people available to you, is a good place to start. Now, winding down 2024, we're here in Las Vegas. We're about ready to kick off our symposium actually tomorrow, just to give everybody a hint at when we're recording this. Any highlights from either the cohorts or what we've been doing this year as an organization?
I've really enjoyed the preceptorships. I've seen students from all over the world, Switzerland, Singapore, US, and it's just really nice to connect and see their craft and how they're doing it, and to help support them create something that they're proud of in their own way and bringing what their expertise is. Like, I really enjoyed seeing that.
Yeah, we're attracting a very high caliber practitioner, both licensed and non-licensed practitioner. And I think that's been really exciting to me. I mean, I think one of the things that Dr. Ted told me many years ago when he started HOMeHOPE was he wanted to move the needle on health just a little bit. And that's what really sold me on HOMeHOPE. And what he also said is that MDs like Dr. Ted and I are the bottleneck in the whole process, because there's just not that many of us. And we're all not that good, most of us, at change and at being more integrative and looking at things from a foundational perspective. So it's been really fun for me to work with lots of non-licensed practitioners that are really amazing at what they do. And tomorrow, actually on the second day of our conference, we'll have a fireside chat with one of these amazing practitioners, Nicole. And so I really love that that's happening. And I've always felt that, after Dr. Ted and I spoke about this in 2017, that the real future of HOMeHOPE was going to be on the hope side of things. That's not saying that we have actually had some fantastic MDs that have also gotten trained over the last couple of years, and especially this year. So I'm really excited about their leadership, because we need more MDs that can be part of the solution and really do something amazing in this world. So I'm really excited for what's to come. We'll talk about that later, but 2024 was a big turning point, I think, for HOMeHOPE. It was the first year. This is actually thanks to Boomer Anderson over here, who created the cohorts. It was his impetus to do this, because it really started just the shift in how we're communicating and how we're engaging with the students, and then building the community.
The thing that excited me the most is actually the development of the community of graduates, where they could ask anything about their patients or their clients, and for us here to be able to monitor a lot of the things that they think about and steer them with the way of HOMeHOPE thinking, right? Just because you finish a course doesn't mean that you switch your perspective entirely to health. As Dr. Scott mentioned here, my goal, as they say in complex adaptive systems, is to actually search for that bifurcation point that will actually switch our perspective away from treating disease and into optimizing health, right? What was very exciting was that Boomer took charge here in developing the metabolomics courses, the cohorts, etc. It's a lot of work and a lot of effort, and a lot of him actually pushing me to actually do lectures, and Scott reminding me to actually do the lectures. But the thing is, it's just like you have a little lever on a lock. And with the momentum that we're building, the community building is especially exciting, because it pulls the lever a little bit closer and closer to open until that bifurcation point actually happens. Right now, for shift away from disease and into health, it takes just a little bit of push. As I've worked with many pioneering people, right? And they said, who is it who said that? Artists need inspiration. The rest of us just go and show up to work. So, and that's what we do. The rest of us just go up and show up to work.
I'll close out here with just echoing everything that you guys said. For me, it's team and community, and the team here. Look, this has been the core team for the bulk of 2024 and 2025. We're expanding the team a little bit, and for me, what's exciting about that is we're starting to see students who've graduated step up and become faculty. And these are people who have gone out in their fields, practiced for a while, and have come back and decided to become faculty. And that's really exciting for me. The continued emphasis on community, whether it's our group WhatsApp chat, which, just echoing what I said earlier about the rigor that the clinicians go through, if a clinician has a question, they can post it in a group chat. Obviously, no names are discussed, but it's answered by another clinician who may have experience with that type of issue within probably 10 minutes to an hour max, depends on time zones. And so just being able to see that responsiveness and continued, I guess the cool kids call them activations of the community has been amazing. And the symposium, well, I'm looking forward to it. So I think it's time to wrap this one up, guys. Any final parting thoughts?
No, super excited for tomorrow.
Okay.
Congratulations on a great 2024, Boomer.
Congratulations, guys. Thank you.